Good morning. Welcome into Five Clubs. Great to be home in our studios in Charlotte, North Carolina. Of course, you are watching on Golf Channel. You can listen on PGA Tour Radio. That is Channel 92 on Sirius XM. And this program is brought to you by Century Insurance. When it comes to business insurance needs, they want to meet them, and they will. And they invest in golf in great ways. They have a great partnership with the USGA, with the First Tee, and we are proud that they are our presenting sponsor, as well as our North Carolina-based companies, Golf Pride. When it comes to grips and all the options that they have, not to mention the reverse taper putter grip system that they have for your putters, nobody provides more with better materials. That's why they are trusted by the best players and every player overwhelmingly around the world. And of course, Peter Millar, this little crown sweater fleece shirt jacket that I'm wearing, you gotta have it. Just go to petermillar.com. It is the fall season. Their fall line is so comprehensive, so robust. Everything you need, from parkas down to underwear and everything in between. It is Peter Millar and petermillar.com. We've got Bob Harig, who's going to be joining us this morning from Sports Illustrated. Many things to get to with him. He wrote a very interesting piece about the complexities of a potential Tiger Woods captaincy of the United States Ryder Cup team. The fallout of the Ryder Cup is continuing, and fallout maybe is being a little hyperbolic, but the reaction and the continued kind of moving on, which people are struggling to moving on from, and that's okay, because it's the one thing where you can question decision making. We could do that modestly when it comes to the individual events, but I can just tell you, in terms of all the things that we have done in the aftermath, not to mention everybody else, the discussion continues, and the discussion will quickly turn its attention to, who's next and what, if anything, is going to be changed. So Bob's going to join me, but there are a lot of other topics to get to with him as it relates to looking ahead to 2026, the balance of this year. And then, speaking of a lot of topics, Josh Carpenter, whose voice is being heard rightfully in a lot of different places by people who are creating golf content, because he writes for the Sports Business Journal, but he has become really the lead guy when it comes to providing information on the business of golf as it relates to television ratings. He's the first one that really is giving you what the audience was, and that includes the Ryder Cup. And the Ryder Cup did not have a good ratings week, and a lot of that was predicated on the fact that it got ugly early, stayed ugly, and by the time it was competitive, the National Football League is right there. The National Football League is part of a wrinkle that I'm going to discuss here in a moment. But I do want to mention just a couple things, just a couple nuggets and notes before I give you some thoughts on kind of where we're headed potentially as it relates to the structure of the PGA Tour, before Bob joins me in about 10 minutes, and then Josh in studio at the bottom of the hour. Oh, we haven't done it in a while, and they're going to be coming because I've been consuming some books, and I just read a book that is as good a book as I've read in a while. Doesn't matter that we're going to be going off-roading as it relates to what the subject matter is, because I think anything that's good should be consumed. I don't care what the topic is. This is a sports book, but we'll do that at the end of the program. I just want to mention a couple things. We were lucky enough yesterday to be in Raleigh for the Grayson Murray Classic, the first one. I hope there are many, many, many editions of it. And we had a lot of different people on the program, including Grayson's parents. And I felt like the day had, a lot of warmth to it. And not easy for Eric and Terry Murray, his parents, to do what they have to do as parents who have to move on after the death of a child. But I thought that the participation of the people who were there, and even though we couldn't get him on the program because he arrived right before they teed off, which was right after we went off the air, I did have a chance to speak with Brooks Koepka for a couple of minutes, and I applaud him for making the effort, making the commitment. As he told me, look, yesterday was one of those long days, and even though he was traveling from Scotland, had his wife Jenna, their child, with him at St. Andrews. They flew back to Florida, and then he turned right around and flew to Raleigh, North Carolina to be there for that event. Played with some people who were obviously donating money to participate in the event. I applaud him. Everybody else, all the people that we had on the program yesterday, it was a day with great intent. And it's going to be a day that's going to have great impact. And that day continued. They had the gala last night. George Burge, who we had on the program yesterday, a rising star in country music. I know he performed. So thank them for allowing us to start our day and to provide our audience here at Golf Channel and also on PGA Tour Radio just an idea of what it is that they intend to do with Grayson's Foundation. A couple other things I want to mention about people who contributed to this program. Congratulations to Gabby Harig. If you're not aware, Gabby qualified and played in the U.S. Women's Mid-Am at Monterey Peninsula Country Club. She did not make it to the match play portion. I don't care. And I know to a large degree she probably doesn't. It's a heck of an accomplishment. She played college golf. She's one of the great rising stars covering the game for The Athletic. We're lucky enough for her to contribute with us as a contributor here to 5 Clubs. And speaking of contributors, one last note. Cole Hammer entered the week on the Korn Ferry Tour 79th in the penultimate event to either graduate onto the PGA Tour or just simply retain your playing status as a full-time member of the Korn Ferry Tour. And he knew that it was going to require him to have a very good week to stay in the top 70, to get into the 75. Oddly enough, he started last year in the event that just concluded in the same position. He figured out a way to have a good week. He did it again. Shot 64 on Sunday. That's pro golf right there. The TV shows, and that event was on television, but you know what I'm talking about. You know, the blockbuster TV show that is the PGA Tour. Look, there's pressure, and the performance is amazing, and I'm totally enthralled. That's pro golf. Because if he doesn't shoot 64 on Sunday, you know what? He's going to Q school. And then you're really going, oh my gosh, now I'm untethered. And now I'm on a high wire, and I got no net. And that is, to me, the essence of getting it done when the pressure of employment is right there, which gets me to what I want to discuss for a couple of minutes, because I love the National Football League, as evidenced by the book that I'm going to trot out here at the end of the show. I've always loved it. And the National Football League has a lot of parity. And Brian Rolap, who is now running the PGA Tour, used a term when he spoke at the Tour Championship that I think is very interesting, but not easily accomplished. Because in the National Football League, you need competency in the front office to be somebody who can exercise competitive parity. Because in the National Football League, if you stink with impunity, guess what you get rewarded with? The best asset that's now available to you in the National Football League from the college football system. That's how parity is achieved. Oh, by the way, equally as important for the National Football League is an economic model that doesn't allow you to violate the guardrails of that model. And you can see with baseball that they don't have those guardrails. So when you look up in October and you go, Dodgers, Yankees, Red Sox, Phillies, it's not accidental because they can violate it. And in the case of the Dodgers, and yes, I'm a bitter Yankee fan, they'll probably get swept out of New York tonight, sayonara. But the Yankees have always had huge advantages, and now the Dodgers are deferring money to like 2050. But that's the rules, kind of, and they're playing by them. So Brian Rolap used the term, he wants competitive parity. He thinks it's very, very important. And I think that the PGA Tour is competitively a system that shows that there's a lot of parity. It's hard to break away. It's hard, and Scottie Scheffler's done it, and we applaud him for it. And we sit here and talk about how he's a generational player, because you don't win 7 and a gold medal and then back it up with 6 and dominance, and you live inside the top 10. If they want competitive parity, they kind of already have established a system of it, because the notion that people that have brands on the PGA Tour are going to get relegated to the Korn Ferry Tour is highly unlikely, because sponsorship drives the model. And if I'm a sponsor of the PGA Tour event, you go, wait a second. That guy wasn't good last year, but you're telling me that I can't give him a sponsor exemption, and Jordan Spieth or Justin Thomas or Max Homa is not playing in my event? Really? You want me to stroke that check? Put him in the field. But what the PGA Tour has done by creating a signature series, the balance of the PGA Tour is competitive parity, and that is relegation. If you're outside that series, and if you can play your way into the vortex of that series, you've been elevated. And if you're not in that series, you've been relegated. So now the Korn Ferry Tour is essentially the third rung, not the second rung. And I'm okay with that. I am. But it leads me to my final point as it relates to elevation. We talk about this, everybody talks about this on an everyday basis, how elusive it is to win a PGA Tour event. And it's not because Stephen Fisk was on the program yesterday. That was dumb luck, because he was somebody who was loyal to his commitment to be at Grayson's event yesterday. And here he is in Mississippi Sunday, hitting home run shots and winning a golf tournament for the first time. And he's not in any signature series events. You cannot deprive somebody who wins on the PGA Tour, like, do more, and then you can get into our really elevated series. No, come on. Anybody who wins on the PGA Tour should be greenlit for 2 signature series starts. You cannot tell everybody who covers the sport that you got to talk about winning and how important it is, and whether it's the Sanderson Farms or whether it's the Farmers Insurance. Whatever it is, winning should get you the greatest rewards. If anybody who wins gets in the Century, that short field, and even they have kind of expanded the format of that to where if you get into the Tour Championship, you're into the Century. Stephen Fisk and anybody else who wins in the fall, they don't get a Masters invitation anymore. My gosh, give them a couple of starts in the Signature Series. You wrap putts in to win on the PGA Tour, you got to get more than just starts in the Players and in the PGA Championship. You got to give these guys an opportunity to truly get elevated. Talent can't be hidden forever, and talent needs to be rewarded when it does the most elusive thing that can be done on the PGA Tour. Take home a piece of hardware, even if it's a chicken. All right, we're going to take a break here. Bob Harig, I love that trophy. I've never seen anybody actually kiss the Sanderson Farms trophy. It's like nobody ever has kissed the Tiger of that Hero World Challenge trophy that Tiger gives out in December. Most people kiss it. Kiss the chicken, Stephen. All right, we take a break. Bob Harig, Sports Illustrated, joins me. Josh Carpenter in studio. Bottom of the hour, book club. At the end of the program, it's a Tuesday edition from the friendly confines of our studio in Charlotte, North Carolina. 5 Clubs Golf Channel, and on Channel 92 on Sirius XM, that's PGA Tour Radio. Back with Bob right after this. Back in Tuesday edition of 5 Clubs here on Golf Channel. Appreciate everybody who listens as well. That is Channel 92 on PGA Tour Radio on Sirius XM. This segment brought to you by Peter Millar. When it comes to having a line of clothing that can cover whatever it is that is part of your lifestyle, they have you covered, including this little fleece shirt right here. This Crown Performance Sweater fleece shirt can be yours at petermillar.com. All right, joining me now, he's got some home weeks. I know it's nice to be home, but I know how much he appreciates and values the work he gets to do for Sports Illustrated. He's Bob Harig, SI.com. Bob, as always, great to have you on the program. Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Gary.
Thanks for always joining me. Bob, at certain weeks, anything you write is probably going to get more clicks, more views. And look, there are certain things that do it. The Ryder Cup has something that other sports possess, primarily football, like decision making, and how could he do that? And he let us down, and they don't care as much as they do. It's the one week that we get that, and I'm going to get to the Tiger captaincy piece that you wrote, but you tell me, what do you think? And I've seen and heard a lot of the stuff that you've said and written in the aftermath of it. What do you think will be the greatest tangible effect of whatever transpired? And what transpired was Europe winning again. What is likely to be a result of what the result was?
Well, Gary, I mean, first, look, I realize this isn't it. This isn't the big answer here, but I think the fan behavior thing's going to be one of the fallouts.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see some. I know you're probably we'll talk about that some more, but I think you're going to see a concerted effort to make that a bigger deal. But in terms of the on-course results, certainly there's several European players who are going to take huge confidence from this. I got to believe Shane Lowry and And look, we've already seen it with Bob McIntyre.
Yep.
Look, he rolls right into the next week and wins. He's a far different player than he was 2 years ago in Rome. And I think these experiences have helped him. On the U.S. side, I've heard it already. Oh, the U.S. just doesn't care. I don't buy that. Scheffler was great talking about this going into the Ryder Cup, how the last one really motivated him, the poor performance. Now, it doesn't show up in this Ryder Cup result, but I think it showed up in the way he's played over the last 2 years. It motivated him. And I got to believe, you think Justin Thomas is taking this well? There's just no way. I think this is sort of and look, Justin Thomas has upped his game a little bit since Rome. When it was controversial whether he should have been on that team.
Yep.
Look, you've got guys. I bet you Harris English is going to remember that for a long time. It was a rough Ryder Cup for him. These guys are professional athletes with pride. They're going to use it as motivation to get better and try to do it the next time. And they've got huge motivation now. And I think this is the key for the U.S. going forward. I mean, use the road as a rallying cry, just like Europe did this time. Figure out a way to use it to your advantage.
The PGA of America, Kerry Haig is really considered by consensus the best setup man in golf. Players go to the PGA Championship. There's rarely ever criticism. In the setup, in this particular case, and I don't want to belabor this because I know there's been a lot of talk about it. Keegan has a lot of control over that. The home captain does. Let's keep that to the side. The other stuff, the fan behavior, there's only so much you can do. The environment itself was combustible. And then also Don Ray and the criticism of him and the apologies and people saying, hey, are you suited to do this job? What about them? What culpability or what examination do you think is necessary on their part?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm amazed how reactive they were instead of proactive. We've known for 10 years what it was going to be like at Bethpage. It's been one of the talking points ever since it was awarded. And to think that they weren't more prepared for what was coming is disappointing. And then even kind of doubling down on it over the weekend after a horrible Saturday afternoon. And look, they don't want to kick people out. I get that. But when something's happening on the sixth hole, and that that group is then going to the seventh hole, don't you get word to the seventh hole, hey, look, it's been really bad back here. We need to be prepared up there. And I mean, you could, because there's such lulls in play, you could even make an announcement at the green. You could make an announcement on the tee.
Fair.
To the fans. You could give them the no tolerance spiel right there. And why they were afraid to do that, I don't understand. And the irony is, it did not help the U.S. side. If that was their intention, it backfired greatly. It motivated the Europeans. That's the thing. They still won. It inspired them. They played even better.
They really did. And I know a couple of the European players, said, and Rory specifically, and here's where I'm going because I want to ask you about him. He even said, why aren't you rooting on your team as opposed to all your emotion and your focus, trying to demean and hurl just ungodly things at them, which they did. And in MASH, you can say, come on, it was a minority. It was enough. It was vulgar. It was despicable. And did he react a couple times? Most certainly. What, if any, effect do you think this has on him going forward? Because the end result was, they stood up tall, particularly Saturday afternoon, him and Shane. That was a long day. Yes, he lost to Scotty in singles on Sunday, but another win for him, another road win that he's a centerpiece of. What does this mean for him in the grand scheme of things going forward?
Yeah, I think this is a good thing to watch because after he won the Masters, there was a segment, I was among them, who thought, okay, the shackles are off. This is going to free him up to do even more. And it actually went the other way for a while. I think Rory found a little difficulty in getting back up, getting motivated again. He got frustrated, and it's proof that you still have to keep working at it because he lost. I don't want to say he lost his game, but he wasn't on his game for a couple of months. And he made the Masters. He said it, at the beginning of the year, the Masters, getting the career Grand Slam and a green jacket, winning a Ryder Cup on the road, and an Olympic medal were like the three biggest things he had left, and he's knocked off two of them. So how does he refocus? I mean, obviously Rory is still great player, and you hope that he wants to continue to build on that, because why can't he get from 5 majors to 6 or 7 or 8? He's got a lot of time for that still if he wants to. And and those are the sorts of numbers we thought he was going to get to 10 years ago when we got to 4 so fast. So does he recommit and try to get that done? I think it's going to be fascinating to see how he responds, because human nature is what it is. It's inevitable for him to maybe want to sit back and enjoy for a little bit.
No, I think this is so interesting because he's a curious mind. He said, I'm going to play where I want, when I want. He's going to play some national opens. He's going to India. Look, he's not going there for free, but hey, look, he's going to India to play golf. He's going to Australia. I'm curious as to see, while Scottie Scheffler, I think, will continue to be the most prolific winner week in and week out on the PGA Tour, is Rory's focus being a major specialist and being somebody who's going to go around the world. And every 2 years, the Ryder Cup will get him redlining in a certain way, and then LA will get him redlining to check that specific box. Yeah, I think he doesn't become less interesting. He becomes more interesting. And the guy who always has been is Tiger. Explain to people what message and what you were trying to convey and what you wrote about the complexities of a potential captaincy for Tiger in 27 at Adair Manor.
Well, first off, historically, it would be incredible if Tiger were to never be a Ryder Cup captain. Everybody on the U.S. side with his type of pedigree has been a Ryder Cup captain because, and you go all the way down to major winners. Jack did it twice. Walter Hagen did it 6 times at the beginning. Obviously Ben Hogan 3, Arnold twice, Tom Watson twice. I mean, that would suggest Tiger should do it at least twice. But I think it used to be a little bit more of an honorary thing. It was just sort of given to these guys after, at that sweet spot in their careers, because it should. And I think the job has evolved. You cannot just show up now and expect the Americans to win for you. I think they would play really hard for Tiger. I think it would make it that much more special to make the team, knowing Tiger's the captain.
Yes.
So I think that's part of it. Like these guys, the guys who'll be trying to be playing the team are guys who've looked up to him. They revere him. That's important. That matters. But look, is Tiger going to be invested? Look, if he had been the captain this year, how much would he have been around? He did not play a single event. Keegan played every signature event. He played all the majors. You could say, oh, well, what did it matter? Well, it matters. It mattered to him. He was heartbroken a year ago when he thought he was going to miss the signature events. If you remember, he got into the top 50 in the last spot in 2024. He wanted to be around where all the best players were going to be. And Tiger's not going to be in that position. He's certainly not going to be playing all the signature events. Maybe he'll play the majors and a few others. Does he show up a little bit more often? I'm not sure a CEO type captain is what's needed anymore. You've got to dig in. You've got to get into this. Now the Adair Manor thing is interesting. He's got that friendship with J.P. McManus. That's been brought about as a reason for doing it. There's a sense that maybe going on the road is less pressure. They haven't won. It'll be 34 years since they've won on the road. Tiger hadn't even won a U.S. Amateur yet when they last won on the road. So those would be things where maybe it's like, hey, he can be the conquering hero almost if he can pull it off. So I do think we're gonna see a decision a lot sooner this time, and Tiger's been pretty good behind the scenes on various things over the years. He has been involved in past Ryder Cups, sometimes
Yes.
behind the scenes. He's been an assistant for both the Ryder Cup and the President's Cup, plus a President's Cup captain. I think one thing that'll be interesting is if he does take the job, does he assist Brandt Snedeker at the President's Cup? 10 years ago, after the task force was formed, there was a big move to incorporate the President's Cup into the planning for the Ryder Cup. And I think they've mostly done that. They've had continuity. Look, it's where the Scotty Russell Henley team came from. They played together in Montreal last year. Look, it didn't work out, but that doesn't mean it was wrong.
Yep.
That was a good, you need to be able to form some partnerships. And obviously, getting in the weeds, they need to figure out something about foursomes. 7-1 2 years ago, lost 6-2 this year. It's the whole difference in their Ryder Cup defeats these last two times. And they've got to dig down and figure something out there.
Yeah, with respect to Tiger and the idea of doing this, I think that there are some comparisons that can be made. I've talked to people involved in USA basketball. Coach K, now he's a coach. He didn't leave Duke when he took over USA basketball, when they stripped it down to the studs. And he took it over before Beijing and totally remodeled what it was. And I think maybe that could be an appeal to Tiger to say, you can be the architect to rebuild USA golf. And to your point about the President's Cup, I think they've done that. They should treat it, and again, I'm not trying to diminish it. It's a profitable entity like the World Championships are in basketball. Same system, same coaches, same mindset, same messaging. It'll be interesting. Last thing, the fall. It's been on a circuitous route here over the last several years. It was part of wraparound. Now it's being diminished. There are no Masters invitations. Those are being allocated now to open National Open winners. And I get the approach of Augusta National. Where's the fall going? I know where it's going. It's going to be October 8th tomorrow, but you know what I mean. Where's it going?
Right. Yeah. Look, I think it's an interesting topic because we've already seen in these last 2 years, the purses of these events have been quietly lowered. They're not as high as the events during the regular year. They're like $6-7 million instead of 8-9. That's one thing. I really do think that they need to lean into the aspect of this is where we're giving playing opportunities for guys to get on tour. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But what we've seen is guys want to take time off, and you're rewarded by the regular season and getting to have this time and not playing. Look, it's a wasteland as far as what Brian Roloff is interested in, and that's in TV ratings and making money. Let's be honest. It's a for-profit enterprise now.
Yep.
And these events in the fall are really not profitable. So, but you have to be careful because you still have to have a place for your membership to try to aspire to the big time. And I think that's what they should lean into. It is what it is. It's not going to, look at the Pro Corps a few weeks ago is a great example to me of just how much the fall is difficult to make any headway. Scotty won. You had some name guys in contention, Ryder Cuppers. But they had 400,000 viewers.
Yep.
It was like basically a tenth of what they had for the Tour Championship. Well, why? Of course, we know why. Football. And so it's very hard to knock heads against it. And so, I'm not sure if there's going to be some bigger fall events as part of PGA Tour Enterprises that might be worldwide. This has been what's discussed. Rory has brought up the idea of like a Champions League for golf where the various entities take their best players and play a few competitions. Would that be in the fall? Would that be separate from PGA Tour? Would you even get buy-in? I mean, like I look at a guy like Scotty. I don't think he likes the idea of playing in the fall. Yep. He feels like, what more do I have to do? It's a grind from January to August. And I'm sure he's going to play the hero, and he'll use that as sort of a ramp up for next year.
Yeah, and he'll win it. Like Tiger used that's why they're different. Like, this is not frivolous. If you want me to play competitive golf, I have one intent, and that is to win. Listen, I appreciate your perspective always. Thank you. Look forward to doing it again soon enough. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks a lot, Gary. Be well.
All right, Bob Harig, Sports Illustrated, SI.com. We take a break. Josh Carpenter in studio with me from the Sports Business Journal. Some of the things that we just talked about with Bob we'll address as well with Josh, but also LIV and where are they going next, and also sponsorship on the PGA Tour, ratings as well. We come back with him in studio right after this on 5 Clubs. Back in on this Tuesday, it is 5 Clubs Golf Channel, also on PGA Tour Radio. That is Channel 92 on Sirius XM. This segment brought to you by Century. We hope there is a Century. They exist. We want the golf tournament to exist, the first event of the calendar year. But when it comes to business insurance, they are such a reliable resource for you, and they invest in golf in great ways with the USGA and the First Tee. Century Insurance. All right, joining me now in studio from the Sports Business Journal. He has become somebody who's so reliable to get information as it pertains to the business of the PGA Tour and professional golf. He is Josh Carpenter. Is there anything you want to say about Bob Harig's numbers on TV ratings? Was he on point? Because that's your department.
Wildly impressed with Bob, and I'll admit, Bob. Sometimes Bob will text me and ask me like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" But Bob was spot on with breaking down the Procore Championship. I mean, love to hear that from Bob.
Wow,
that means we're spreading the good word about TV ratings, and everyone's interested now.
Well, I mean, look, it's always been something that people pay attention to, but I think now, and what you're taking on is trying to give people all of it and extrapolating not just linear stuff, but also, you know, all of the different tiers. And when you bundle all this stuff together, what does it really look like? Because I think when people see a TV number, they go, oh, it's like, take it easy. Let's all wait until we get it all. What's that been like? Let me just start right there in terms of understanding and educating yourself on accumulation and the aggregate of an audience as opposed to the way it was done and accumulated 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a big I've been at Sports Business Journal for 13 years now, and I've been pretty keyed in on TV ratings across all sports for that tenure. So it's been interesting to see it change. But this year, with the introduction of big data into is kind of a set that Nielsen's adds in that streaming. You heard the last number of years you talk about a TV viewership figure, and the response was always, well, what about streaming? What about this and that? Well, now that streaming is in there with this new big data set that was introduced on September 1st. So we're only about a month into it, but it is giving us a little bit more of a clear picture into what these events are drawing, right?
Sure.
And so that's why if you look at the Ryder Cup, right? The Ryder Cup, I think final round was around 3.2 million viewers. Right. 500,000 of that or so was via streaming. So if you take away that, and if we were just measuring the numbers how we were last year, you're talking about 2.7 million viewers for the final day of the Ryder Cup, which to me is kind of stunningly low.
Absolutely.
That's barely above like kind of a regular Sunday on the PGA Tour event.
The shoulder programming for that event is more robust than anything because we have to wait so long for it. So with that being said, what if anything changes? I know Taylor Zarzour, his program on Sirius XM, I know that he has been a proponent of looking maybe for a different time in the calendar. Don't try to take on football. That's not going to happen, though, is it?
I don't know, Gary. I mean, does it? I mean, you could see you've got a new CEO of the PGA Tour.
It's not going to happen in 27.
It's not going to happen in 27. I don't think it'll be anytime soon, but I won't rule out it happening one day.
Fair.
I will say, like, everyone talks about, like, you know, getting away from football. But then do you take a chance at alienating your core fans who are like, man, why do we always have to I just want to see the Ryder Cup in September. I like the cooler weather.
Absolutely.
I like the setting. You know, I don't want to see it in August.
August, these guys playing bare knuckle matches all day from 7 a.m. until 6 or 7 o'clock at night in 95-degree weather somewhere.
Right at the end of a grueling season.
And not having
over 25, 30 weeks, right?
There are challenges to that. Speaking of challenges, LIV, these numbers, these financial losses, give everybody kind of a snapshot of what they've dealt with and how little traction they've gained here.
Yeah, so basically LIV has two entities that kind of run its business. It has one in the UK that runs everything, all their events outside of the US, and then it has its entity that runs its US operations. The US arm is kind of private. You're not going to see financials on that, but some financials were filed in the UK last week detailing their numbers from 2024, and it totaled about $460 million in losses for 2024, which would, I think the number for that in 2023 was about $390 million. So
Right.
you're seeing an increase there in losses. Yeah, so some pretty eye-popping numbers, I think you might say, in terms of losses for a sports league. And again, that's just counting the international events. That does not take into account what's happening in the U.S. Their player payouts, their player salaries are done in the U.S., so like those numbers are not part of those losses. Pretty eye-popping losses, but then you look at, you know, the PIF, the Public Investment Fund, keeps putting money behind this
Yes.
league. You look at, they lost a handful of executives just last month, left the league following the season.
And they filled those positions.
And they filled those positions just yesterday. I reported on it.
Yep.
You look at, you know, LIV has a new CEO in Scott O'Neill, very well versed, very well thought
Yep.
of in the sports business community, ran Madison Square Garden, ran the Philadelphia 76ers, has been around the block. I think Scott really kind of used this year, his first year, to kind of observe and make some decisions about what's going to take place down the road. And now you'll really see his kind of roadmap start getting implemented. And that's with hiring 4 people who he's worked really closely with over his you know, kind of tenure in
Sure.
the industry.
And they have had some weeks where, and including the last one, now it did not translate to a big television audience, but when you have your team playoff and you got stars that are in this and it gets outside of competing against the PGA Tour, and they've also had some weeks, look, they have some markets that have responded to them
Sure.
as far as on the ground audience and a sense of atmosphere. And I think that in Scott's defense, I'm curious to see what this year means, because to your point, you want people with shared vision. You want people you can trust, and obviously he's installing some of that. Back to the PGA Tour in Miami, how close are we to knowing who the sponsor is for this big-time, big atmosphere event?
Yeah, I think we could be pretty close. I've heard that they've got a deal. If it's not done, it's pretty close. I don't know a name on that company yet, but
If you don't, then
it's
nobody does.
it's another big. You know, by all accounts, it's a very big deal. You know, it sounds like, you know, the number for these signature events leading up to now has been about $25 million per year for a sponsor to pay for that. I think Truist paid about 26 to sponsor the event here in Charlotte. The number for this Miami event was closer to $30 million.
Wow.
Per year. That's 1 year to sponsor a golf tournament.
Remarkable.
1 week, you know, even some people might say. So,
And that's a gauntlet of signature series events right around each other. That one precedes the aforementioned Truist you just referenced.
correct. So, you know, I think it's a sign that, like, hey, if the PGA Tour is in the market for close to $30 million for a signature event, like, I think it signifies the business is pretty good, right? And Brian Roloff has to like what obviously there's probably a lot of changes that he wants to make, but I think coming in, he feels like he's got a pretty strong product to sell.
Okay, so speaking of change, the fall is, it's like this piece of clay that gets molded and it's like, looks okay, it's still kind of crude, let's break it down, let's do it again. Where do you think all this is going by 27? Is 27, do you think, when we see it, we're going to be like, oh my gosh, that's the real makeover?
Yeah, I think it could be. Obviously, Roloff just came on board just not even 3 months ago,
Yep.
I think, right? So he's fairly new. The schedule came out for 26 in August, right? So that was already set. I think if you're looking at 27, that's the year, as you mentioned, that could see a lot of change, whether that's in the fall or whether that's in the mainline PGA Tour season. Someone brought up to me at Bethpage Black that Major League Baseball, their collective bargaining agreement is up at the end of 26. And right now you've got Bryce Harper telling the commissioner to get out of his clubhouse. It doesn't seem like those two sides are really close on, and I think a lot of people think there might be a lockout. And so if you look at a new guy like Brian Roloff coming in, he's thinking about these things. And he's saying Major League Baseball is kind of the only big thing happening in the summer. So if he's able to get these changes in, and I'm just speculating here, if I can get these changes in place by 2027, the PGA Tour can really own the summer. Like, yeah, you have NASCAR, But like, you're going to be one of the big players throughout that summer, and if baseball's not around, maybe people are watching the PGA
if
Tour
baseball,
instead.
if the commissioner in baseball dig in on a cap, there'll be no baseball. That union is hard to bust.
But I'll say, like you've heard Rolap, when I talk about change in 27, he's talked about when he was introduced in Atlanta, scarcity.
Oh yeah.
Aggressive. Like he mentioned the word aggressive, I think 6 times in that opening press conference. Like he's not going, this ain't your mama's PGA Tour anymore.
Oh no, P&E changes. I mean, it
changes a lot of things.
It changes a lot of things.
Yeah.
Last thing, TGL, the tours got connectivity to it. They rolled out their schedule. You say anything noteworthy to you?
Yeah, it looks fairly similar to last year in terms of broadcast windows. They'll make their debut on broadcast TV. I think again that's a play to get some higher viewership, because they can go and they can say, hey, look, we drew over 1 million viewers for our first event. It's going up against the NFL. It's kind of a weak NFL slate that day, that Sunday afternoon. But overall, TGL season looks pretty similar. I'll note another interesting thing there. They're going to play on the same night as a PGA Tour event. So you've got the Cognizant Classic wrapping up there in March in Palm Beach County. That night they're playing a PGA or a TGL event just a few miles away.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting in terms of, are these players going to compete in Palm Beach and then go play a TGL match that night? If you look at the lineup for that night, TGL, it's made up of guys who don't typically play in Palm Beach, so I think they'll make that work. Every little scheduling detail done by TGL, it's very meticulous. They know exactly what they're doing.
Guy who runs it ran a TV network.
He ran a TV network.
This one, Always great seeing you. Thank you as always.
Great seeing you. Thank you,
Josh
Gary.
Carpenter, Sports Business Journal. Those are winning words presented by Century Insurance. Business insurance needs are met at Century. We come back. I like books. Yeah, it's not a golf book, but it's a book you should read. The Book Club right here on 5 Clubs coming up next. We haven't done the book club in a while. You want to know why I know that? The staff just told me, hey, we haven't done the book club in a while. No, we haven't. This segment brought to you by Golf Pride. When it comes to having grip options with the best materials, they're just simply the standard globally. Every player at every level trusts Golf Pride more than anybody else. Well, I think most of the time you think I'm just going to talk about golf books, and I do. But in this case, when you read something so good and you know you got an audience that has a lot of varied interest, you got to share. And I know that this book, American Kings, a biography of the quarterback by Seth Wickersham, Seth did a very robust campaign when the book was released. I'm just telling you, as somebody who's read a lot of books about sports, this is masterclass in terms of giving you a historical viewpoint on the position and the evolution of the most famous position in American sports. You know, starting with whether it is talking about Joe Namath or Bob Waterfield. And did anybody know that that John Elway wore number 7 because Bob Waterfield wore number 7? And that's just a tiny little anecdote. But from Arch Manning to Caleb Williams to Dan Marino and Steve Young and Joe Montana and John Elway and Tom Brady and Warren Moon and everybody else in between, this book is a masterpiece in terms of trying to give you an understanding of the mindset and the cultural relevancy of the position all time and where it stands now in our psyche. And if you got one, you got a chance, as evidenced by the New England Patriots. Like, you think that the Patriot fan woke up on Monday going, okay, we got a chance. This book, American Kings, I promise you, you will love it. I kept putting it down, and that you go, no, that's usually the bad indicator. I kept putting it down because I was running out of pages, and I wanted to savor it. So the book club, you're going to get more books this fall, and I've already started another book that was actually referenced in this book several times, and I was just curious. I'm like, that's got to be good if you keep referencing that book, and I've just started it. And guess what? It's not a golf book, but here's the thing about this book that's going to be next in the book club. The application of what is in this other book is so applicable to golf. It's fantastic. Go out, buy American Kings, the biography of the quarterback by Seth Wickersham. Congratulations to Seth. By the way, he played the position, and he's written some other fantastic books. And Access gives you an opportunity to really tell the story of people, and he did it in such a masterful way. I thank Bob Harig for joining me on the program, and also, of course, Josh Carpenter from the Sports Business Journal joining me in studio tomorrow. We'll talk some LPGA. The LPGA has had, a fine year, but their best player at the beginning of the year, inarguably, Nelly Korda, has not won a golf tournament, and now she's not going to play in the International Crown. If you did not see that headline that became available yesterday saying that an injury is going to prevent her from playing in this big event that's going to be played in Korea, and that is a real ding to the event. Even though she hadn't won an event, she's a huge star. We'll talk some LPGA tomorrow. And of course on a Wednesday, and I told Brooks Koepka, I said, we could have done some more pictures of your dog Cove. Dogs of the week on a Wednesday for us. So for all of us here at Signature Sports Group and 5 Clubs, we hope you have a great Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow.